We're here with the 2019 BMW X5, the fourth generation of the world's best-selling luxury SUV. It also happens to be Australia's best-selling luxury SUV with over 55,000 cars sold here to date. It's been the best-selling car in its class for 10 years, and this new car, in my opinion, is only going to extend its lead. Before we jump in though, I do want to just show you the exterior of this car, starting with this enormous grille, which seems to be getting bigger by generation. Now these little things in here, these vents actually open up for cooling. So if you walk around to the side, you will see this really nice feature line that goes through the entirety of the side of the car. But my favorite part is actually the rear, and that's because of these amazing taillights. Now, look, it's probably hard to see on the video or in pictures, but they really do stand out. It actually does really give the car a very modern look. And if you open the boot, which is the same size as the previous car, but you know, it's very big. This one does make a funny noise, but we'll ignore that. It's got a two-step design, so you can open this and that, and you can even program it so that when you press the button on the remote, both open or one opens at a time. This one is one at a time, but if you press this, it'll close just like that. So let's get inside and I'll show you the interior. If you've been reading our BMW reviews for the last few years, you would have probably noticed that we have said a lot that BMWs of today don't really have modern interiors. Now with that new X5, I have to say, that's totally inaccurate because this is as modern as it can get. You've got these two massive 12.3-inch screens and they are really good quality, really good resolution. A really nice instrument cluster here. The buttons are perfectly laid out. There's no more knobs for lights. Everything is just a button. It's really, really easy to use. And this particular car has got the crystal gear lever, which is just gorgeous. It's like a piece of jewelry. As is the rotary dial for the iDrive, which I should say is excellent. It is the latest version. And although this car comes standard with CarPlay, you don't need it because iDrive is actually really good. In terms of room, I am really comfortable here. I've been driving this thing for a while, and it's the sort of place I could spend a whole trip from Brisbane to Sydney. I have also sat in the back, and there is a ton of room. You can actually fit 3 adults in this without a worry. And of course, it does have ISOFIX points, so you can put child seats in. Now, I have been talking to you about the M50D, which is this car in particular. It's got a bigger diesel engine. But the car I actually really want to drive is the M30D, and that's over there. So I'm going to get out, and we're going to jump into that. And that car is about 113,000. And it is the most popular car, and that's the reason I want to drive it, because as much as I love this car, and it's got a lot of torque and a lot of power, that's the one you should buy. The reason I say the 30D is the one to buy is because whilst the 50D has a quad turbo, that's 4 turbos in its diesel engine, this is actually the same engine. It just has 2 turbos, and frankly, with 195 kilowatts of power and 620 Newton meters of torque, you really don't need any more oomph. This will go from 0 to 100 in just 6.5 seconds. Now remember, that is a speed that a lot of the hot hatches can't actually match. So this, as your kindy pickup or your school drop-off car, is more than adequate for your needs. I mean, you can spend the extra 35,000 or so for the 50D, and look, it is a better car in many ways, probably in every way. But what I would suggest is if you don't need to spend the extra 35, you will be very happy with this. There are some things that I would recommend you option on the 30D. And for me, the bigger wheels, the biggest wheels you can get on this car are 22 inches. And usually I'm a little bit reluctant to recommend the largest size wheel because it tends to compromise the ride. But on this car, BMW engineers have finally managed to find the perfect compromise between dynamic ability and comfort. So whilst a standard X5 doesn't get the full adaptive suspension, it does get adaptive dampers, and that makes a hell of a lot of difference on the larger wheels. So you can actually drive it around on the massive wheels and it'll be very, very comfortable, unlike the previous generation, which I actually found quite horrendous. The other reason why I'd recommend the bigger wheels is because they're not run flats. Now if you get the 20s, don't, they look ridiculous, or the 21s, which is what this car is currently on, you do get run flat tires. And now not only are they harder, obviously, but they're also more expensive to replace down the line. So the 22s, non-run flats, look better, not really that expensive, and with the nice suspension, you really do get the best of both worlds. Now this particular car does have air suspension optioned up, so the height is adjustable, but also it's very, very comfortable in here. I'm currently in comfort mode, and I've been driving around country roads, currently on the highway, and yeah, the suspension is sublime. It's a really, really good suspension system. The steering also has been significantly improved over the previous car. The 50D does get a better steering system. It also does get better suspension and a differential lock, which does help you in some instances if you want to go really fast. But frankly, this car as it is, without too many options, at $113,000, is a bit of a bargain. And I say that wholeheartedly because I'm sitting in here and I've looked at the options list. There isn't much on this car, really. The sunroof is standard, the seats are standard, everything I see around me is all standard, and that's not something I'm used to for a BMW. So I do have to give him some applause there, because this car doesn't actually increase in price over the previous generation. It's exactly the same cost. And you're getting a lot more for your money. So there's something to that. You know what I was really worried about when I got into the new X5 was that it's not going to be as good of a driver's car as the previous generation. Now, the previous generation went a little bit too far. It put dynamic ability above everything else, so it was quite uncomfortable to drive every day, but it really cornered well and it really drove nicely. So when I got into this and I started driving around some normal roads, I was thinking, geez, this is really comfortable. It's going to be really ordinary around corners. But then I found some corners, and I got to tell you, it's not the case. This is really good. The steering is just sensational. It's got really, really good feedback. It gives a lot of response to the way you go around bends, you know, what the front wheels are doing. But also, it doesn't lean, it doesn't roll. It's got a really, really good setup. But interestingly, even when you're absolutely flying in this, which not many people will ever do, it's really quiet in here. I'm a bit shocked. I can only really hear the air conditioner on because it's a really hot day, and nothing else. There is such little road noise coming into this cabin that I'm just absolutely blown away by the level of NVH. It's really low. They've done a great job with this. So I reckon your kids will fall asleep back there in a heartbeat because it's so quiet and so comfortable. The other reason I really do like this new X5 is that there is no skimming on safety. This car, as with every X5 that's coming to Australia, gets the full suite of all the safety systems standard. So you've got obviously AEB, autonomous emergency braking, you've got adaptive cruise, you've got all the lane departure stuff. Everything you can sort of think of, this car has. Plus, it has some really, really cool features like the reverse parking assistant, which basically, as you're driving along, if you come into a car park and it's really complicated, as long as you're going under 30 kilometers an hour, it will remember the last 50 meters of your drive as you come to park. So for example, you've gone into this really horrendous driveway at a hotel or something like that, and then you're trying to get out, and you're trying to back out, and it's really complicated. All you can do is just tell the car, hey, just come back the way I came in, and you just lift your hands off the wheel and just control the brake, and the car will just remember exactly the inputs for the steering wheel, and out you go. I've done it. There's a video of it on our Facebook. Have a look for it. It's really quite impressive. It's also what you get in the new 3 Series, so I think that technology is going to become quite standard across the range, and it's actually a really, really useful feature. What isn't a useful feature though, and you may have heard it beeping at me before whilst I was talking, is the gesture control. So this car, like the 7 Series, has what BMW calls gesture control. So for example, if someone is calling you and you don't want to pick it up, you could just go like this. And there's a camera here that can see what my hands are doing and sort of try and work out what that command means. So if I like put my hands like this and turn the volume, it actually turns the volume up. And if I do this, I think it picks up a phone call if I'm getting one. It's got all these weird gesture controls, and honestly, I've got a button here that'll do the same. It's got a picture of a phone, and I just press it and it picks up the phone. And I've also got volume controls here. So I have absolutely no idea what the point of gesture control is, apart from looking like an idiot. So if you're sitting there and watching this and thinking, but I really wanted to buy an X5, don't let me talk you out of it. It is a great car, and it's got a lot of power and a lot of torque, and it'll do 0 to 100 I think in the low 5s. It's crazy. It's a lot of SUV. There is an X5M coming, so that's obviously going to be more expensive. So you know, the X50D is still a great buy, and it's gonna have more torque than the X5M regardless, because it's a diesel with 4 turbos. But There is another car to consider. That's $3,000 more than this, so $115,000 or $116,000 plus on roads, and that's the X540i, and that's a petrol engine. And frankly, I don't know if I wouldn't go there instead of this, just because as much as I love a torquey diesel, in the times that we live in, I think maybe a petrol engine for resale is going to be a better option. So, you know, if you think about it in 5 years' time when you have to sell this car, and perhaps our attitude to diesel has changed in inner city, then maybe a petrol car is not such a bad idea. As I said in my written review, I do genuinely believe this is the best luxury SUV I have yet tested. Now, to be fair, I haven't driven the new GLE, but for me that car would have to be at least 1.5 generations ahead of its predecessor to be as good as this, because this new X5 is easily the benchmark now. And for me, that's because of its stupendous amount of standard features, which is not a word I would ever use for any BMW in the past, but it is actually the case here. And also all the safety systems, the fact that it's so comfortable out of the box, the fact that you can put 22-inch wheels on it and you can drive it every day, the fact that it's dynamically extremely capable, but also because it looks good, because the interior is really nice. I am really happy being here. I do feel like I'm in a luxury SUV. So it has been the best-selling car for a very, very long time. And honestly, I can't see that changing anytime soon.